What would you do if you found yourself with only 24 hours to survive after a nuclear explosion? Let's delve into the stark reality of such a scenario. A nuclear explosion is a catastrophic event that ushers in immediate and long-term effects, both devastating and far-reaching. The initial blast itself is immensely destructive, but the aftermath is what truly tests one's survival skills. In the immediate wake of a nuclear explosion, we face a triple threat. First, the blast wave, a wall of pressure that expands outward at an incredible speed, crushing everything in its path. Next, the heat, reaching temperatures higher than the surface of the sun, causing widespread fires and devastation. Lastly, the pulse of nuclear radiation that can cause immediate illness or death, but it doesn't stop there. Once the initial horrors have passed, we then face the long-term effects. These include nuclear fallout, a mix of radioactive particles that rain down from the sky, contaminating everything they touch. This fallout can linger for years, posing a long-term threat to all forms of life. Now, this might sound like a scenario straight out of a dystopian movie, but it's not. It's a scenario grounded in reality, albeit an extreme one. And it's precisely in these extreme scenarios where survival skills become paramount. Surviving a nuclear explosion goes beyond the initial moment of the blast. It requires knowledge and preparation. It requires understanding the nature of the threat, the steps to take immediately after the explosion, and the measures to ensure long-term survival. It requires resilience, resourcefulness, and a strong will to live. Surviving a nuclear explosion is about more than just enduring the initial blast. It's about thriving in the aftermath, navigating the new reality, and rebuilding from the ground up. It's about understanding the science, the mechanics, and the human elements that come into play. Understanding the science behind a nuclear explosion can provide vital insights into what one can do to survive. The knowledge you arm yourself with today can make all the difference in a world forever changed by a nuclear explosion. Time is of the essence after a nuclear explosion, and your actions in the first few hours can make all the difference. In the aftermath of a nuclear explosion, your first and foremost priority should be to find shelter. The reason being fallout. Fallout, a mix of harmful and radioactive particles that are propelled into the environment during a nuclear blast, can pose serious health risks. The intensity of radiation is highest during the first few hours following the explosion, and exposure to it can result in severe illness or even death. So, what can you do? Seek immediate shelter, that's what. The best place to shield yourself from fallout is indoors, preferably in a basement or a room without windows. This is because the walls and roof of a building can provide a barrier between you and the radioactive particles outside. Now you might be thinking, what if I'm out in the open when the explosion happens? The answer is still the same: seek shelter. Even if it's not perfect, any form of shelter is better than none. If you're in a car, stay there. If you're near a building, go inside. It's all about putting as much distance and as many barriers between you and the fallout as possible. But here's a crucial tip. Don't wait to find the perfect shelter before going inside. The longer you stay exposed, the greater the risk. So get inside, then work on improving your shelter, and remember, stay put. The radioactive fallout is most dangerous in the first few hours after a detonation. After that, the intensity of radiation decreases rapidly, so resist the urge to leave your shelter too soon. Stay informed, listen for updates from reliable sources, and only venture outside when it's safe to do so. The first few hours after a nuclear explosion are not about panic, but about making smart, calculated decisions. And the smartest decision you can make? That's right, finding and staying in a shelter. Because when it comes to surviving a nuclear explosion, shelter is your top priority. The first few hours are about making smart decisions, and finding shelter is your top priority. After securing shelter, the next critical survival elements are water and food. In the aftermath of a nuclear explosion, having an accessible store of water and non-perishable food items is paramount. It's not just about quenching thirst or satiating hunger, it's about ensuring your body has the necessary fuel to keep functioning, to keep fighting. It's about survival. Water is the lifeblood of all living things. The human body, in particular, is about 60% water. It's used in every single cell, tissue, and organ to maintain temperature, remove waste, and lubricate joints. Dehydration, especially in a survival situation, can lead to a rapid decline in physical and mental health. So, how much water should you have stored? The general rule of thumb is 1 gallon per person per day for at least 3 days. This should cover both drinking and sanitation needs. But remember, in a nuclear fallout scenario, you may not be able to leave your shelter for several days, even weeks. So, the more water you have stored, the better. Next, let's talk about food. You'll want to focus on non-perishable items that require minimal preparation. Think canned goods, dry mixes, and food bars. These items can last for years on your shelf and provide essential nutrients when fresh food isn't an option. But just as important as having food and water is knowing how to ration it. It's easy to panic and consume more than necessary. But in a survival situation, you need to make every bite and every sip count. Divide your supplies into daily rations and stick to it. And lastly, be cautious of contamination. Consuming contaminated food or water can lead to radiation sickness. Always use your Geiger counter before consuming anything. In a world turned upside down by a nuclear explosion, these basic necessities, water and food, become the difference between life and death. They become the building blocks of your survival. Proper planning and rationing of food and water can be a lifeline in the hours following a nuclear explosion. In a post-nuclear scenario, staying informed is crucial for survival. Sound knowledge is power, and in a world that has just experienced a nuclear explosion, the right information can be the difference between life and death. Here's where a battery-operated or hand-cranked radio comes into play. A radio might seem like a relic of the past in our digital age, but when the unthinkable happens, it could be your lifeline. Picture this: the power grid is down, the internet is out, and your smartphone is as good as a paperweight. But a humble radio, especially one that's battery-operated or hand-cranked, can still tap into the airwaves. Emergency services often use radio frequencies to broadcast crucial updates and instructions. They might tell you about safe zones, where to find supplies, or how to protect yourself from fallout. These broadcasts could be your best, and maybe only, source of vital, life-saving information. So how do you use it effectively? First, make sure you have spare batteries or a hand crank. Regularly check the condition of your batteries and replace them if necessary. If you have a hand-cranked model, remember that you'll need to crank it often to keep it powered. Once powered, you'll need to tune into the right frequency. In the United States, for instance, the emergency frequency is usually around 162.400 to 162.550 megahertz. It might be worthwhile to note down the emergency frequencies for your region and keep it with your radio. Listen for updates as regularly as possible. Information is likely to change rapidly in a post-nuclear scenario, and what was true an hour ago might not be true now. Finally, remember to keep the volume low to conserve power and to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Having said that, it's important to remember that communication tools are not just about reaching out, they're also about staying informed. In the face of a nuclear explosion, a simple radio could be your lifeline, connecting you to a world that's trying to survive just like you are. Communication tools are not just about reaching out, but also about staying informed. Surviving the first 24 hours is just the beginning of the journey. In the aftermath of a nuclear explosion, the following days, weeks, and even months will be a test of endurance and resilience. The initial shock might have passed, but the real challenge comes as you navigate through the new normal. A critical aspect of survival is maintaining a survivalist mindset. This means being mentally prepared for potential challenges and setbacks. The harsh reality is, the effects of a nuclear explosion don't just disappear after the first day. In fact, they can linger around for years, and the immediate 24 hours is just the tip of the iceberg. One of the most significant challenges you might face is radiation sickness. This can manifest in various symptoms, from nausea and vomiting to hair loss and burns. It's a grim prospect, but it's something we need to discuss. It's crucial to keep an eye on your health and the health of those around you. Seek medical help as soon as it becomes available, even if you feel fine. Remember, some symptoms of radiation sickness can take time to appear, and while you're doing all you can to stay healthy, it's equally important to stay vigilant. The world post-explosion is unpredictable. Resources may be scarce, and danger could be lurking around every corner. So keep your wits about you, stay informed, and always be prepared to adapt to the changing circumstances. In the end, survival is about more than just making it through the initial aftermath. It's about being prepared to face the long-term effects of a nuclear explosion. It's about understanding that the world as you know it has changed, and so must you. Adapting to this new reality, staying strong, and maintaining hope, these are the keys to survival. Survival is not just about enduring the immediate aftermath, but also about being prepared for the long-term effects.